So, Garland slash Chaos. I mean, let's just be real here. Final Fantasy One did not have much in the way of writing to speak of. It was not exactly, you know, there wasn't exactly a ton of development for a villain or opportunity to make a good character. In Stranger of Paradise, though, Garland's pretty cool. But FF1 Garland is just kind of there. He's big bad mwahaha mwahaha haha. Not all. Haven't played two. I'm honestly gonna put Xanda and Cloud of Darkness in there for the same reason. So the logic behind Xanda and Cloud of Darkness being where they are is essentially they came out of nowhere. You didn't really have an antagonist in Final Fantasy 3. You were just kind of doing stuff. Like your goal was very minimal. You had like I need to restore the crystals and save the world or something like that. It was like you kind of got a prophecy and then just followed it and then ended the game. And both Xanda and Cloud of Darkness just kind of came out of nowhere as the antagonists behind everything that had been happening. You never really got to see them before you met them, like before you fought them. Golbez, though. Golbez, I'm going to put. I'm waffling between top of good or bottom of great. For now, I'll stick him in great. But throughout the entirety of FF4, you were just constantly being hounded by Golbez. He was always there. From the moment you met him, your entire journey was chasing him, and every time you found him, he got one over on you. He was just he was very much this ever-present, like omnipresent antagonist who just made you feel like something was like you were always on edge because you never knew when he was going to do something else, like especially with what he did to Kane and everything, like just top-notch villainy. Zeromus, I'm sorry, he has amazing music. He has a really cool sprite when he's in his Zeromus form, but he, much like the villain that they didn't even bother to include from FF9, and much like Cloud of Darkness, he was like, you finished the game, but there's another big bad who is worse than the one you fought, so now you have to go and kill them. There are a couple of FF14 villains who have a bit of that same energy. But we'll get to that later. Gilgamesh was actually a fun character in FF5. He was kind of like he was kind of antagonistic, but he never really like he had a positive role to play in the game due to the nature of his character. But I think I'm going to put him in the good one. And X-Death is just the next Cloud of Darkness or the next goal, or the next my brain just mushed. So many G names. Too many G names. We'll move on. But there's nothing to say about X-Death. He wasn't there for the entire game, except one brief moment where he kind of Deus Ex Machina you into a bad situation, and it just didn't really feel very earned. Kefka, however, much like Golbez, Kefka was always there. At least during the first half of the game, he was always there, and in the second half, the threat of him was always there. Kefka also had some of the best lines in the early Final Fantasy games. Because they were just so nonsense. Like, whoever wrote him had a good time with it. Kefka is just the epitome of I'm evil for no reason, and I'm just gonna get my way and ruin everything and destroy things, and you're just gonna have to live with it. There was no redeeming backstory, no, you know, no like, oh, I was experimented on, or I grew up constantly in someone else's shadow, or etc., etc., etc. Kefka was just evil. He was crazy, he was evil, and he didn't give a fuck. And he won. And like that is what makes him so well like thought of as a villain. It's like there's no attempt to redeem him. There's no attempt to make you understand him. He's not supposed to be understood. He's just supposed to be feared and then overcome. Sephiroth, if we're talking original FF7 Sephiroth, I would kind of put it at like in the higher end of the met here. Since we have FF7R to rank off of, and FF7R has not gotten its own section, I'm gonna judge him based off of like the way he's been portrayed in FF7R, which puts him noticeably up the tree. In the original FF7, Sephiroth, I think he was just not localized well. I'm not 100% confident in that. Let's get that music back on so that we have some background going. He just wasn't localized well, I think. I'm not 100% confident that's the problem, but I think so. And as a result, he just kind of felt meh. But in FF7R, they really did a good job of like actually making him feel like an ever-present threat, which is, I think, what a good villain should be. Like a good villain, you should always feel the threat, maybe not of them individually, but of what they could do to you. Like, not every good villain is going to be you see them every 5 minutes. Some of them are, you know that the reason you're having troubles is because of them, even if they're not there, and they're just too far above you in their eyes to even deign to reveal themselves. But I think it's important that a good villain's presence be felt throughout the game. If I don't feel the presence of a villain, that villain didn't do anything for the story.
Having phantom screens professionally installed in your home can lead to some...
That's the problem with music, with YouTube, is you get ads every so often. Not even the ones you want. I think in FF7R they also made him have like better dialogue. He doesn't feel quite so like nonsense. He makes sense. Like the dialogue he speaks to you actually fits his character fairly well, which I think is a good improvement over the original FF7. Edea, I feel like some people are going to not like this, but I don't think FF8's villains were very good. FF8's villains had a bit of that same kind of nonsense feeling that that FF7's villains did originally, and they didn't do a good job of like making me fear them, making me feel their presence, making me care about them. Like I didn't hate them when I played through what I did of the game. I didn't feel like they were these threats I had to deal with. They were just kind of there. I'm moving the kind of came out of left field, you didn't really know them at all, and then suddenly they were the villains down here as well. Kuja, however, Kuja is fantastic. He is a perfect example of the opposite type of villain to Kefka. Kuja, you can really appreciate where he came from, like what led to him feeling the way he does and why he wants to do what he does. His motives are crystal clear by the end of the game. They're not clear early on in the game, but by the end of the game, you have a pretty good understanding of what Kuja wants, how he works, and who he is. And I think that's what you want out of a villain like that. I also think that they did a really good job of tying him to Zidane in a clever and unexpected way, without like just making him feel like it was natural that they would be opposed to each other from the start. I think Seymour's in the good category. I think Seymour is a fairly decent villain. I think the whole Jacked / Braska's Aeon thing goes firmly in the meh category. Seymour is interesting. There's a lot of interesting story threads surrounding Seymour. In fact, I think I might even put him closer to the top of the good category. Actually, let's do this. Seymour, he isn't just he isn't a typical antagonist, is I guess the best way to put it. Which is kind of a weird thing to say, but like he when you kind of get into his reasons and everything, it's natural he would be opposed to you, but it also feels like there's a world where that could have happened where he wasn't. And I think that's an interesting that gives him some extra points on that. FF12, sorry, FF12's cast is garbage. Everything about FF12 is garbage. There's nothing good to say there. No, I will not ask for forgiveness for calling FF12 garbage. But yeah, I I have nothing positive to say, and I have almost nothing to say at all. I love you, honey. That is a perfect use for that. Okay. FF12 does actually feature two fairly good characters. I they are the exceptions in the rule of the game, but Balthier and Fran are actually interesting characters. And if the game had been about them instead of about Vaughn and Pinello trash, it might have actually been a decent game. Like, they are good. They would have been good protagonists. Um, they are interesting characters. They have a good dynamic between them. They have strong writing. Like, they are the one part of that game that I actually have something positive to say about. So that is FF12. Now we're getting into FF13. And I feel like I'm going to surprise a lot of people here. People who know me well and have talked to me a lot, I'm not going to surprise here. But I'm going to be ranking most of the FF13 villains quite highly. Barthandelus. The only problem with Barthandelus as a villain is that a lot of what made him a villain, a lot of his motivations and a lot of the understanding of how he is a villain and like what was going on with him was hidden in data logs. So if you didn't read all of the extra details, you wouldn't have known the real truth of like the whole story. Barthandelus's position of being forever a prisoner of this city that for people he didn't care about, taking care of a society he had no interest in, but not having all this power and not being able to free himself from that in slavery that he had. Like, he was enslaved to Cocoon. Although the people of Cocoon would never know it, he could not do anything to harm Cocoon directly. But he hated it. He had been there for too long. He didn't want to be there anymore. He wanted to be free of that prison. So like the whole story was him working around the limitations imposed by his Gias, by his oath, not oath, but like the bond that he had to try and force something to happen to free himself. And like when you put the story in that context, it becomes a really interesting story. And Barthandelus's constant badgering of the protagonist was just to piss them off. And that's why it felt like that's what his goal was. Like when you hear what he's saying, when you like see him interact and stuff, it really does feel like his goal is just to piss you off. It's not, he doesn't have a goal to stop you. He doesn't have a goal to, do anything. His goal is to anger you. And in that context, that makes the some of what happened makes so much more sense. We have switched back to an ad in case anyone's wondering. There we go. It is time for another. I'm cropping out the ad at the bottom, by the way, in case anyone's wondering what's going on here. That's better. All right. Similarly, Caius is actually an incredible antagonist, but we'll talk about Caius actually when I get back, because I need to run an ad break, so I will be back in a few minutes. Alright, I am back. Oh, I forgot to switch to a break screen while I was gone. Whoops, sorry. So, we were about to talk about Caius. Caius Ballad. And yes, I am putting him right up at the top. He won't stay at the top for that long. But for now, he goes right up near the top. So, Caius has the distinction of being, in my opinion, the villain that has the best, the most relatable reason for his actions of any of the characters here. Caius has been cursed with immortality, so he's been alive for hundreds of years, and in those hundreds of years, what his life has been him watching the person he loves most in life die in her teens over and over and over and over and over again. Dozens of times he has watched the same thing. The person he cares for be reborn, grows up, and then dies in their teens. All because of the same curse, or the opposite component of the curse that has forced him to live forever. Knowing that there's nothing he can do to stop it, because it is just a rule of this world that must exist, that she must exist, and that she must have a guardian. So he is stuck living forever until somebody can defeat him and take over the guardianship. And she is stuck in the cycle of rebirth forever as long as the world exists. After a while, his goal became for the world to stop existing. Can't blame him. He just wanted her to stop suffering. Over and over again. And that is why he has the most relatable villain story in the series. Because, God, I can't imagine what I would do in that situation. Now here is the exception to the Final Fantasy XIII villains rule. This guy's a tool. He's another one of those who just kind of popped up at the end. Like, you hear about him a couple times, but like... he's nobody and nowhere for most of the story. This music's actually really good. I'm gonna have to listen to this more. She should be a little later. She was in Stormblood, right? Hey. He was first. The two of them were also from... So these three were the ARR villains. These two were the Heavensward villains. These four were the Stormblood villains. He was the... No, these two were the Shadowbringers villains. She was the Endwalker villain. and these two are gone. Okay. He could be put anywhere, but aside from that, I'm pretty sure this is right. Because he's kind of the everywhere villain. He's been in every story except the most recent one. Same with Emmett Selk to an extent as well. But Xenos, honestly, Xenos is pretty good. Xenos has some really memorable lines. He's very memeable. And everyone remembers him. Like, not Xenos. Gaius, not Xenos. Xenos is later. This is Gaius. Everyone remembers Gaius. Nobody forgets him. Anyone who plays FF14, you will remember Gaius for the rest of your life. Like, you might not remember his name like me. You might get the name mixed up, but, like, you will remember him. Yeah, he has the magical girl transformation. He has, like, the, massive speech that, like, you'll remember this guy. And I think that makes him quite high ranked. He's kind of a bit of a one-dimensional villain, but that's fine. He doesn't need to be layered. He does his job well being a one-dimensional villain. These two I'm less fond of. I think I'm going to drop these two.
Meet Keith. He makes bank with EQ Bank.
Ad. Sorry, guys. I hate... These two, the two kind of generic Asians from the ARR story, they're generic and they're Asians, and that's really all I can say about them. They're not like the worst characters ever, but they're definitely not like highly ranked characters. Church guy? I can't remember his name offhand. It's been so long since Heaven's Word. But he eventually becomes Thornton. Is Thornton his name? Thornton is the name of... Thornton isn't his original name, is it? Like, I thought... Is Thornton his name? I thought Thornton was just the name of what he becomes as the, Aeon, or the Icon, or the... whatever they're called. Might be his real name, too. If it is, well, he's Thornton. He's Thornton now. You've been renamed to Thornton if that wasn't your original... if that wasn't already your name, buddy. Honestly, he's pretty good. Yeah, okay, good. He's a pretty good character. Like, he has a bit of that like ever presence as a figure in the story for that. He really pulls the strings effectively, and he's responsible for one of maybe the 5 or 10 most memorable scenes in FF14. I don't know if it would quite count as number 1 for me, but it's definitely up there. He's not directly involved in it, but he's responsible for it, and you will never forget that that is the case. Similarly, Nidhogg is kind of in the same sort of vein as like Kefka, not as good, but like he is just mad, and he's just lost in war and enraged to the point. And I think that serves the story well, so I think I'm going to put him in the good category. I don't think he warrants great, but I think I'll put him like in the middle of the good category. Because I think he does what the story needs from him. He is just rage incarnate, and the story needs an element of an ever dread. It needs an element of dread. because Heavensward as a story is without that element of constant threat that you never know, you never know what this mad dragon is going to do. You wouldn't have the sense of urgency that the story lended itself well to. So I think I'm going to put him up there. It's weird seeing her as a villain, isn't it? Because she's not a villain anymore. She wasn't, but she was a pretty, like, ruthless antagonist for a bit. But, like, she's now, like, she's good. And she's actually a really good character now. But if we're ranking her based off of when she was an antagonist in Stormblood, I think she kind of bridges the gap between meh and good. Like, I think I'll put her at the bottom of good. Because I think she did have some really poignant scenes in Stormblood that worked very well. But like, if we were ranking her as like an NPC in general, I would probably rank her up in the great category pretty safely. Because like, they've done some really good things with her story since she stopped being a villain. So now I have the hardest one to rank. Because he's had like 4 different roles over the course of the story. And each one of them has been of a different caliber of good. Like, Amon's role in Crystal Tower was nothing. This guy's role in her story, he was very, very hateable. But then his role in, like, the Endwalker story, I think was where he shined, because you kind of got the sense of him having lost all fetters and just being, like, a maniacal crazy. And you hated him, like. I think I will rate him based off of, like, how he ended, not every part of his story. And I think I'll put him kind of next to Nidhogg, because I feel like he served a similar... God damn it. I just ordered you. You don't need to advertise to me. Sorry. So yeah, I think he served a similar role as Nidhogg when he was at his best, which was he was kind of just a force of emotion that pushed the story forward and ensured that bad things happened. And I think in that regard, he did a good job of that, and he was a positive contributor to the story. Honestly, if not for one very specific character being as good as he was, would she be the best villain in FF14? Because she was easy to hate. I can't even remember her name, I just remember Tsukiyomi. But then they also did some really interesting things with her story afterwards as well, but like, she was eminently hateable. Yeah, I suppose, but like, she was well written for what she did in the story, and she was very well written, she was easy to hate, she was... It's true, I think the ending of it did not reach a satisfying conclusion due to certain factors. Yeah, I think I might have to knock her down a bit because of that. I still think she was one of the better ones with that, but I think you're right. I had forgotten how unsatisfying kind of her early conclusion was. Man, so many people hate Xenos, and not in the sense of like hate him from a game perspective, but think he is just this atrociously badly written monster, and I don't think that that's true. I am not a hater of Xenos. Except that I, hate what he did in the story, but like I am not one of the people who wishes Xenos was in the story less, or I think he actually did his job as a foil to the Warrior of Light really well. Like, he offered a different perspective on what someone like our character, obviously our character is individualized, so this doesn't apply to everyone, but like the idea of what our character was, given the power we wield, he offered a pretty interesting counterpoint to what our character could have been without the right influences, like without being in the right position to end up taking on the right, I guess, responsibilities. And I thought it was interesting the way they kind of staged him as being the same, similar to what the Warrior of Light is portrayed as, but without the positivity on it. And for that, I think he was quite good. I'll put him up there. FF14 has good antagonists. For the most part. And here is where the for the most part kicks in. Although actually we've already had a couple of mez, but the real antagonists generally tend to be pretty good. Vothri, I think was his name. Honestly, I think I might put him down there. I feel like you could have, with very minor adjustments, made the end or the Shadowbringer story work without him. Like, you would have needed someone in the position of acting as a bridge between the Light Wardens and the people. But, like, I don't think Vothri added anything to that role of being a go-between. And, like, even his big moment where he, became the raid boss and was actually pretty interesting, it came out of nowhere and it didn't really make sense. Like, you could have written him out of the story and it would have taken very few changes. Yeah, exactly. Now, anyone who has played Shadowbringers is not going to argue with this. Emmett Selk is a masterpiece of how to write a villain. Like, so much about him from, again, he has that ever-presence. He is like this omnipotent threat that feels insurmountable. But you also get to understand him, and you're like, well, I would have probably done the same thing, or I would be thinking the same thing in his shoes. But you also realize how evil what he's doing is, despite that, and it really kind of makes you think. And it's like, I understand this, but I also can't say I wouldn't be doing the same. He's just so good. He is so good as a character. And just the way the voice actor delivered him as well, the snide arrogance that just makes you just immediately understand how little he thinks of you. Just everything. Fantastic character. Start to finish. No complaints. He's even still a fantastic character when he's no longer a villain, but I won't go into that because this is about his villain arc. Much like Xenos, I think more highly of Medion than a lot of people. I get that Medion had a bit of the same problem as like Cloud of Darkness and X-Death and Zeromas, where she was kind of a gotcha villain where like you had very little build up for her before, but I thought they did a really good job of kind of how to put it. Of explaining her depression and making at least me care about her. Part of it is that she's a burb, so, you know. Credit where credit is due. They knew how to make me care about a character, make them a bird. But I thought the way that they wrote Hermes into putting her in this impossible position, because, you know, Medion, the character that we met in the prehistoric story, like in the prehistory, she is a very good character. She's empathetic. She's got that, like, childlike desire to please and to wonder, and she's like sweet and cute, and then she's given this impossible question, and but at her core she just wants to give a good answer back, and she can't, because the question she was asked to give an answer to was flawed. But she can't recognize that because, you know, the person who made her gave her that question. So she can't realize that he's flawed. So, like, she is just a product of what she was asked to do, which led her into a depression so complete, a despair so complete, that, again, she lost it. I'm not gonna, like, rank her, like, up here with Emmett Selk. She's nowhere near as good of a character as Emmett Selk. But I hear a lot of people saying she should be, like, down here, and I think she's a fairly good antagonist and a fairly good character. Like, I would probably rate her kind of in the middle upper echelons of good. And now we're going to find out why I am not super into Dawn Trail, because like honestly, maybe bad. Zeralja and Sphene are just not great characters. Zeralja had the potential to be a good character. Early on, I kind of was annoyed by him. And then when there was like a moment where I was like, oh, he's got some potential. But that potential did not get developed in the way it needed to for him to become what I would consider a good character. He just became, yeah, he just kind of never lived up to the potential that like he had, and like there was definitely potential in him. I will not like, I won't pretend he was bad from the start. But like he just wasn't very interesting, and especially at the end when he became the main, or when he and Sphene became the main antagonists. Actually, no, I think I'm gonna actually drop Sphene down. I'm judging Sphene partially based off of the character Sphene that we have. Yeah, exactly. Every time they had potential, they chose the worst option. Like, they were faced with it with like a pathway that forked in the middle, and one fork was this could be cool, and one fork was no, he'll be dumb. And they always went the no, he'll be dumb option. And I moved Sphene down to bad because in addition to being kind of a meh character from the start, Sphene as a villain also suffered from the suddenly she's the big bad syndrome. One sec. Okay. This one's kind of a weird one for me because I have not played um the full version of FF15, which sounds weird because I played FF15 when it came out and I bought the game, but they later patched it and did a whole bunch of new stuff with the story, and I've never gone back to that. So my perspective on this character is a little bit skewed because there is from what I have heard, the new episodes and stuff expand his character a lot. The additional expansion to the game and the story do a lot to kind of expand what he is. But from the perspective of FF15, like the original release, I kind of think he sits in this like meh category. He was there, he was fine, he wasn't the worst character, but like he wasn't special. didn't really care about him. I didn't hate him. I didn't like him. I didn't feel betrayed by him or anything. I just didn't care. So, from that perspective, I think I'm going to put him in the meh category. Now let's just see if I'm actually content with this. Is there anything that I don't... The great category I'm happy with. I think this is supposed to be Edea and this is supposed to be Ultimecia. And I think Edea was the better antagonist. Yeah, I think I'm pretty happy with this. Anyone in chat have anything they want to add, or anything that surprised them, or anything that they were expecting otherwise, or anything that they dramatically disagree with me on?